And now I will request our chair of this session, Reverend Stephen Avino.
Well, before I start, I just want to say thank you to all our panelists, because this was truly a pre-Parliament event in every sense. It was the appetizer, as Dan Olson said earlier, to what's going to happen in August, and it's exactly what we want to have these discussions on a much larger scale, and this was a great example of that. So, and thank you, Dr. Siddiqui, and the Muslim Host Committee, and WCMIR for putting this together. Why don't we do a round of applause for Dr. Siddiqui? So the Parliament of the World's Religions has a long and storied history, and it has a history that is reflective for the best of what humanity can do. In 1893, the first Parliament was held in Chicago, and is widely recognized as the birthplace of the Interfaith movement. 100 years later, the world returned to Chicago. Many people here were involved in the 1993 Parliament. And also, we continue to have parliaments around the world after 1993. There were parliaments in Cape Town, Barcelona, Melbourne, Salt Lake City, Toronto, and virtual during the pandemic. And I'm here to tell you, as you've heard earlier, that in August, thousands from all over the world will come back to this great city. The 2023 Parliament of the World's Religions will be held from August 14th to 18th at the Lakeside Center at McCormick Place. And we want all of you to be there. In 1893, Swami Vivekananda said during the Parliament that he fervently hoped that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. I would like to think that the good Swami was right on that day. That with that bell, a movement began, a movement that continues today and will continue in August. A movement that will eventually lead to the end of fanaticism and persecution. A movement that recognizes we are all human beings in all our diversity, and we are all still humbly human, part of one human family. But this cannot happen without work. And it's time for people of faith to get to work. You see, freedom, human rights, and democracy are under attack all over the world today. You heard earlier today from Shashank about what some see as a crowning achievement of the 1993 Parliament in Chicago, the global ethic. The global ethic affirms human rights as defined in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But the global ethic also states, after 2 world wars and the end of the Cold War, the collapse of fascism and Nazism, the shaking to the foundations of communism and colonialism, humanity has entered a new phase of its history. Today we possess sufficient economic, cultural, and spiritual resources to introduce a vision of peoples living peacefully together, of ethnic and ethical groupings, and of religion sharing responsibility for the care of earth. A vision rests on hopes, goals, ideals, and standards. And it is the communities of faith who bear responsibility to demonstrate that such hopes, ideals, and standards can be guarded, grounded, and lived. This remains even more true 3 decades later. I don't have to tell all of you that these autocratic dangers we thought possibly in 1993 were a thing of the past, what the global ethic calls fascism and Nazism, have reared their ugly heads around the world, and here in the United States. They perhaps are growing and not collapsing, as we thought they would be in 1993. Here in the U.S., Christian nationalism is a growing threat to us continuing to be a religiously diverse democracy. Violence and hatred is an epidemic. Children are being murdered in their schools. And Shashank told us earlier, violence turns us away from what is ultimately real. Lies and conspiracy theories have infected people's minds like never before. Imam Charles Muhammad might say we're not testing our hypothesis to come to the real truth. These are just some of the mired examples of how we're not living up to what those in 1993 thought would be our future. It is our moral responsibility, or as Karen Danielson might say, our default purpose, as people of faith to nonviolently guard and exemplify these hopes, ideals, and standards, even if one is blacklisted as Rabbi Davis was. We must not let the world slip back into the old phase of history, a phase of autocracy and the suppression of human rights and freedom. This is why it's important that events like today happen. It is also a time for a change and to live up to our ideals. And it's why next year the theme as we've discussed today, is a call to conscience defending, not next year, this year. The theme is a call to conscience defending freedom and human rights. We're being called to build a better world. And in a moment of great crisis, as people of faith, we must rise together and defend these freedoms and human rights of all. This is what we're going to do next year in Chicago, and we hope all of you join us. Thank you.